Hello, everybody. It's 10:49 p.m. Central Time on the 20th of October, 2022. Sorry, guys, I almost just fell over in my chair as I started the update. Perfect start. It's Thursday night here in the United States. Let's go ahead and get a display capture turned on so that you guys can see what I see just a little bit better. We're going to be doing a full update for the whole planet. We will be starting over here in the West Pacific. If you don't know what you're looking at Earthquake 3D, the program. I don't get anything for recommending it, but I do recommend that you use it. And it's a good program that just shows the earthquakes around the planet using the Usgs and EMSC European agencies, as well as any others that you want to select on the full version. So let's talk about it. Deep earthquakes down below the plates. They are raised high off the globe so you can see them easily. And we have letter D's on the map where we have forecast area points where we look for new deep earthquakes to strike. And so, for instance, there at Philippines, we have an earthquake raised very high off the globe. They're down at 400 or so kilometers deep down below the plate. Over here at Tonga, same thing. Several of them going all the way down the plate boundary, which I will be showing you in a second, the plate boundary. And we'll start by showing you the plate boundary coming out of Japan and going to the south, where in Japan we have deep earthquakes raised high off the globe, and all the way over to Afghanistan we have earthquakes raised high off the globe. So those are deep earthquakes, and where are they happening? They're happening along these plate boundaries. Now you see the plate boundary here at Tonga, for instance, up on the east-northeast side of Australia, the Indo-Australian plate boundary. Deep earthquakes going down, following the plate boundary, going towards New Zealand, all of these deep down below the plate. Over to the west, like I said, over at Philippines and up at Japan. And all the way over at Afghanistan. So what's going on? Below the Indo-Australian plate boundary, spreading up to the north, we have a bunch of earthquake activity that's deep down below the plates. But I want to draw your attention to these. Two 4.9s. Now I need to know which one struck first. This one struck, let's see, at 12:29 UTC. This one struck at 12:16 UTC. Both today. So what is that? Almost 15 minutes apart? Two of the exact same sized earthquakes. And look where they are. See this diamond shape, of course, plate. It's a separate plate from the Pacific. Goes up to Japan, and it meets with a H-shaped plate boundary at Japan. Now this is normal, or it's regular, for us to see two of the same sized earthquakes on both sides of the plate boundary, as this wave that's causing the earthquakes travels through the area and drops off. Same sized earthquakes spreading out thousands of miles, going from plate to plate, following these plate boundaries. Once we get to a plate, when the plate absorbs the energy goes across the craton boundaries, the interior parts of the plates. But overall, this is following a path of least resistance while it's trying to equalize out on all sides. So 4.9 and 4.9. Let's just call it two fives. And why does that matter? Because look what struck down around the bend of the plate. A 4.9 struck right here. It's hard to see. And then we go around the bend of the plate. We have a 4.4, a 4.3, a 4.4, a 4.3, and a 4.6. If you add those up together, guess what they equal? 4.9 to 5.0. So cumulative total of energy going around the S-shaped plate boundary here, which you can even see in the topography or undersea bathymetric measurements. Same sized earthquakes going around. Then we get over to Indonesia, Western Indonesia, where a 4.7 is. However, I absolutely must go check the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center because we have a few volcanoes that are now on the list. So let's go jump over, take a look. Ibu in Indonesia, Kerinci in Indonesia, Ibu again in Indonesia, Sabancaya in Peru, Fuego in Guatemala, Sanjay in Ecuador, Semeru in Indonesia, Nevado del Ruiz volcano in Colombia, Reventador in Ecuador, Popocatépetl in Mexico, Kerinci in Indonesia, Suwanisejima in Japan, Sabancaya in Peru again, Sanjay in Ecuador, Reventador, Langila is on the list, and we have to talk about these. First of all, let's keep going down the list because also Semaru is on the list, as well as Sakurajima again. I'm going to show you where these all are. So Semaru and Kerinci, both over here in Indonesia, one in Sumatra, one in Java, and it's smack in the middle of where our earthquakes have struck over the past several days. The new eruptions took place. So the previous earthquakes were marked in red, and here's our pinkish colored earthquakes. We go back over here, and smack in the middle of all these is Mount Ibu, right there on the letter V. As we go to the north, we can skip over all of Philippines now and all of the Izu Ridge, focus in on South Japan at Suwanizajima and Sakurajima, where the two sets of rings overlap, that middle point. Suwanizajima's in the island, Sakurajima's on the land right there in South Kyushu. As we go up to the north, we get past Japan, we get into the Kuril Islands, and all those volcanoes that were going up to the north a few days back, nothing, gone. Now let's talk about the big elephant in the room, the big earthquake we're waiting for. We're looking for a big earthquake to strike from the Solomon Islands over here into Vanuatu. My warning was issued 5 to 6 days ago, and we can jump over to my YouTube channel to go see the warning. And it's over here, let's see, right there. It's still marked as 5 days ago. It's YouTube time on the West Coast, but again, we're talking on the 15th. It's now 5 days in. We're going on day 6 tomorrow. And I tell everybody it's 7 to 10 days from the point where a deep earthquake happens or where a solar storm arrives or when I issue a warning for a big earthquake. It's 7 to 10 days. But 7 days is where we really get to the point where we know if the spot's going to be hit. We'll start seeing other things take place, like sudden eruptions of volcanoes that we haven't seen on the list in a while. And right down here on this crescent-shaped island is Mount Kerinci. Kerinci has not been on the list, as far as I know, in a very long time, several months. Not Mount Kerinci. Mount Langila. Mount Langila, sorry, Kerinci's over to the west. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to go show you Kerinci in a second, because it's not normally on the list either. Langila. So right here on the crescent-shaped island, Langila, and no seismic all the way around it. Take a look. 1,000 miles over to the east, 1,000 miles over to the west, with the volcano centered right in the middle. So I had several people leave pretty interesting comments over on my post about this, about the new eruption in the middle of the area where we're watching for a big earthquake. And some people were, kind of dismissive of what it means. Other people understood that it means there's something going on in the spot. I don't think it's like a pressure relief valve, though. I don't think the eruption, 9 to 10,000 feet at Langila, would relieve any kind of big seismic pressure that's at the spot. I actually think it's a sign that there's building pressure in the area, and pressure really should just be described as the wave. The peak of the wave is going to be coming up here in between, should already be happening very soon. We are on day 6 of this, going into day 6, of a up to 10-day watch, but 7 days is really what I'm looking for. Now, all around it, this is, 48 hours? Here's 48 hours worth of earthquakes. Over to the west, huge cluster over in Indonesia, and Mount Kerinci shows back up on the list over in Indonesia. And it's been a while since Kerinci's on the list. Semaru is somewhat of a regular eruptor. Semaru is right here on Java, and Kerinci, I believe, is somewhere right over here. Oh boy, I just said that, right? Like I won't be able to find it. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe Kerinci is also on the eastern part of the island over here in Java. Man, maybe I'm getting... Well, you know what? The only way to find out. Mount Kerinci. Oh, no, I got it right. It's just a little further up. There it is. I'm going on memory on these guys. So Kerinci, not normally on the list much. It's in the middle of Sumatra. And then over to the east, we, again, have Semaru. It's somewhat more regularly on the list. But really, it's just spaced out going from central Indonesia, where Ibu is, back around it across the whole plate boundary. Let's get back to the plate boundary map from the USGS. This is going to make sense in about 2 seconds. India, Australia, the whole edge of the plate boundary is in motion, going down across New Zealand, down across the south side of Australia, and all the way to the Indian Ocean. Let's take a look. Here's 2 days worth of quakes. Here's 3. Here's 5. Here's 7. If we look at the full 7, you'll see the shape of the plate boundary itself going back to where the deep earthquakes are. Do you see it? Here, let's go compare the shape of the earthquakes going around the outside edge of the plate with all the same size within a hair of a point of one another to this. We go all the way around it. Now, the USGS page here is only showing us 1 day's worth of quakes, but anyway, it wouldn't help because you need to see it three-dimensionally looking down upon it, whether it's on a flat surface or on a round one or a disc one. We need to look down on it and see it in a three-dimensional shape of the earthquakes plotted out across a distance. And therefore, the whole plate boundary has shifted in the last several days. This goes back to our solar storm arrival and the sudden influx of new deep earthquakes, spreading all the way over to the Mideast. So let's talk about the Mideast. Let's talk about the Indo-Australian plate and how it's tied to the Mideast. Look, boom. It's literally on the edge of it. So when the Mideast starts having deep earthquakes down below it, that just means really the deep earthquakes have spread across the whole Indo-Australian plate, going as far north as Japan into the adjacent plates to the north, and as far west over into the Mideast, like I just said, up here in Afghanistan. So I hope this just is a basic refresher for all the people who've been here for a long time. And for new people, again, let me just sum it up. Deep earthquakes come up from down below. Then there's somewhat of an equidistant spaced, same-sized earthquakes that spread out in all directions. Think of these like people lifting up on the underside of something. And the something they're lifting up on the underside of is this, the plate boundary. And then a force spreads, or a wave, spreads out and away from where they are lifting. And when we get multiple people lifting at different points on the underside of a whole mass, the whole mass starts to move. And then guess what? Like sheets of ice floating on a lake, the other plates start to respond out and away from the push that's happening. Hey, guess what? When you push on something, if it's touching something else, if you put enough force on the one thing you're pushing on, it will push into the other thing. Remind me to not allow the USGS to do any moving of my furniture because they'll deny that. So that's sarcasm. I'm sorry. But let's just take a look at the same-sized earthquakes going around the outside of the plate. 4.6 and a 4.7 up here to the north from the past day. And what's down to the south? A 4.5, 4.6 to 4.7. And I mean exactly. 4.7, 4.6, 4.5, and then up to the north, 4.7, 4.6. And stacked up off the screen, you can barely see it, the other 4.5. That's just one spot. We get the same sized earthquake spreading out like I just started the whole broadcast with, going on both sides of the diamond shape of the plate boundary here. So I've got the warning going right in the middle for an 8. Nothing's hit yet. We have a few more days to go. All of our deep earthquakes are here, and this area has gone quiet. No earthquakes reported of any significant size, while all the areas on all sides are moving. That's not good when you're in an earthquake-prone area to begin with, like Papua New Guinea or Solomon Islands or Vanuatu. Now it looks like Vanuatu has actually been hit by a 4.6. So we can actually check off Vanuatu and look just a little bit to the west, I think. I'm not going to cancel the warning going all the way to Vanuatu or even further over to the east, but this big open silent zone with Langila suddenly erupting there, come on. Now for the people in Japan, the people in Indonesia, the people in Philippines, the people in Western Indonesia, I'm not just talking about here for big earthquake activity. We're going to take a magnitude step up across the board once this whole thing breaks out and goes across the plate. So we're already at a bunch of 4.9s. And when I say a bunch, I mean it. That's a lot. There's been like, I don't know, I'm just going to guess 25, 30. Just pulling that out of the air, literally. But there's just so many that have hit. And we even have an emoji that I've made over in the Twitch chat room. It's called the 0.9 Club. They're probably all using it right about now. And I could even jump over and maybe even show it to you. You guys can go over and check it out. We made a special emoji to address the 4.9s and 0.9s that keep hitting. Now, what's the deal with the 4.9s everywhere? Well, I would say they're 5s. 5s, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and that each one is being taken down to 4.9. So when you see a bunch of 4.9s, it really means a bunch of 5s. And why would they do that? Well, I think average Joe would start to pay attention a little more, start getting a lot of questions at the inbox kind of thing. So what's the difference between a 4.9 and a 5? Literally 0.1 magnitude. So no difference. But to the public, what's the difference between a 4.9 and a 5? A bunch of 5s showing across the board or a bunch of 4s? Everybody's apps are set to a ding when they get 5.0 plus for notices. Okay, now let's jump over to Europe and jump over to the United States and Central America. I think we should do Central America first because that's the largest earthquake of the day, 6.7. Now hold up. Look at the screen. If you guys didn't know, earlier this week, a 6.3 to 6.7 struck right next to this, about 500 miles away. Separate earthquake entirely at the start of the week. Where did it hit? It hit over here on the Cocos Plate, about 500 miles south by southwest on this stair-step fracture zone that goes over across back out into the Pacific. So first, a 6.3 to 6.7 struck out here. Then, downstream, following where the arrows point, we get a new same-sized earthquake right off the coast of Panama. Now, going back out to the west, this new earthquake struck today. And we can look over on the USGS plate boundary map. Where did that hit? It's marked in orange out here now. Now notice the USGS has nothing on their Pacific map coming across. And we go back to here and you'll see we have a giant arrow. It goes back right to where all of our deep earthquakes are. And what do we have over here? A 5.2, a 5.5, and another 5.2. Now those deep earthquakes we can get out of the screen there because that's over 5 days old. Take a look at it. A bunch of deep 4s coming across. We have a 5.4. Think of this like the combined total of all of this. And it's coming across, over, and up. Hence the Leviathan logo that's been there on the map for forever since I had animatronic put it there. Leviathan, just a old world symbol of a sea creature coming up from deep down in the depths of the sea and coming up across and then hitting South America. And which one struck first? This. This struck at 6:12 UTC. Then, 6 hours later, boom, 6.7 at 11:57 UTC. So what really happened? Think of this like a train coming across a bridge. When it hit over here, follow the plate boundary in, up, and crash into the eastern wall of the Cocos Plate, which butts up against, of course, Central and South America. But it also butts up against the Pacific, where the energy came across to begin with. The new push. Again, start of the week, we had a previous push that came across. I can't go back more than 7 days on this feed. Doesn't matter. There was a 4 point, I think it was a 4.9. Either that or 4.6. 4 point upper something struck here just at the start of last week, then followed by this 6.3 to 6.7. Now, today, a new 5.4 struck, and then 6 hours later, this hits. So a new push is coming across, a new wave is coming across, and each wave peak is about the same size. And that's why we're getting the same sized earthquakes going across the plate. Let me just quickly sum this up for everybody just so you can understand how simple this is. People make it more complex than it needs to be. Think of each one of these quakes, these 4.9s for instance, as the peaks of a wave that's spreading out across these red lines. And the wavelength between peaks is the size of the wave. So the distance apart, 1,000 miles apart, let's say. I'm just, again, grabbing that out of the air. Let's just say they're 1,000 miles apart, spacing on 4.9s. That's a very low frequency to ultra low frequency wave, where the peaks are coming up every 1,000 miles. Or it could be the trough, the bottom of the wave, where it bottoms out. But I think it's at the peak, where the most tension would be, as this very low frequency electrically induced wave that's also a vibration of sorts, created by tension and pressure from these deep earthquakes from down below, coming up through the plate. And it drops off the earthquakes along the way. And so it spreads. The wave coming up from here down to the south spread two ways like a letter V, went up to the pinnacle peaks of each side of the plate like a diamond, 4.9 and 4.9. And these are hours apart. Again, they're just a few hours apart. I already looked that up earlier. And then we come back together to the north with the same size, two 4.9s, adds back up to a 5 to 5.1. And they have it at now 5.2, but whatever. Okay, so big earthquake. Now, take a look at the big earthquake and look what it's surrounded by. A bunch of other smaller 4s. So what is moving around here? Over to the east, USGS map 1 day doesn't really show it. You have to look at 2 days. Looking at 2 days, you can see it. The whole area around here moved first with the pink-colored earthquakes. The white-colored earthquake struck today. So, back to it. All the Cocos Plate going down into South America, up and around over into Mexico, shifted first. Then the new push came across. New earthquake broke, smack in the middle of it all. Now, the energy is going to be traveling over to the east, and I have to issue a alert, actually, a terremoto alert. Terremoto means earthquake in Spanish, I think. Pretty sure. Earthquake alert for Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico's the island right here, but we have to tell everybody from Haiti. Actually, hold on. This is way bigger than an area I would normally warn, first of all. So normally I would warn 200-mile stretch. But I think we're going to have to watch from Jamaica across to Puerto Rico, which I don't know how many miles that is. It's got to be 1,000 miles. So I would look in the middle of it for the 200-mile stretch, which puts us smack in the middle of Dominican Republic and Haiti. However, I want everybody from Jamaica all the way over to Puerto Rico to be on watch for something that's pretty big. Now, I don't think it'll be as big as the 6.7. Famous last words, knock on wood, whatever you want to do. But the cumulative total of everything that didn't break here, the energy is going to go across. It's just a matter of how much was absorbed when it went into Central America. But the energy is going to be going, the wave is going to be going around Central America and following the plate boundary to the north and over to the east and over to the mid-Atlantic ridge. Ultimately, it's going to try and equalize across, out, and over. So, magnitude-wise, I'd put it at least at 6. I'd put it at a 6.0 warning for the next 7 days from today. So that puts us to the 27th of October for a new earthquake of significant size to strike over on the east side of the Caribbean plate. One more time, let me explain why, for all the people who may not normally watch. Simply put, a wave is coming across, and it's going to be spreading out and across and over and trying to equalize on the opposite side over at the mid-Atlantic ridge. And as the wave is coming across, it drops off earthquakes along the way of the same size or similar size. So the only question is how much energy is absorbed here and how much transfers over to the east. And I think it would be probably about 6.0 over to the east. If we have a 6.7 impacting over to the east, we should see some of the energy dissipate, but it still wouldn't take us down that far. Okay. USGS is reporting 4.6 over in the Solomon Islands. We already talked about that. Next to Vanuatu. Okay, U.S. Let's talk about Alaska, Hawaii, and the lower 48. First of all, I mentioned the lack of eruptive activity up here. Alade stopped. Also, Chivalouche stopped. They all stopped. We haven't had any. Ebico, not on the list. And the earthquakes, they're marked in pink. Those all stopped in the last day and a half. Here's what's hit in the last day. So it's a stepping stone path going through the area, heading over towards Alaska. Now, Alaska only has 2s and 3s right now. Let's turn down the rings and try and find our area to be hit. So up here on mainland Alaska, it's not much to go on. Let's look at 0s, 1s, and 2s. We have a little ramp of earthquakes coming from Katmai Volcano, a little swarm happening at Katmai and going up across into Mount Denali and then going up into central Alaska. But it stops with a 3.1, kind of a pinnacle tip here. We go back down. Again, it looks like a ramp jumping up out off the plate boundary. Let's go back to the USGS plate boundary map and show you what I'm talking about with that ramp. We go up and off the plate boundary, jumping off momentum, if you think of it like that. The wave is traveling across, and instead of making the hard bend just right down to the east-southeast, it tries to maintain momentum and goes right into the edge of the craton. And you could see it. Literally, the earthquakes take the trajectory of the craton once we get into the United States. But it absorbs the energy up here, so we have to watch for new breaks up here that are significant in size as well. How many months has it been since Alaska's been hit by anything large at all? I'll say it's probably been 6 months since they've had anything huge, big for them, which would be 7.0 plus. So for the next 7 days, I have to issue a new warning for this as well. Since we're dealing with 6.7 down here, I'll just warn them for 6.7, same sized earthquake. 6.7 seems to be the number of this week, by the way. It's the third 6.7 if this one hits. up in Alaska. So 6.7 in Alaska, halfway point between our 4.6 that struck today, which is out at Adak, and over to the east, the 3s going up into the plate. That puts us right down here at the plate boundary. Vanuatu volcano is also right there. So just east by southeast of Vanuatu volcano. Watch out, guys. We could be dealing with up to 6.7, maybe even bigger by the end of this week, next 7 days, by the 27th. Still watching for the big one in the West Pacific. We have 2 more days to go on that warning. West Coast and Hawaii. Hawaii is still going on. We still have the eruptive activity, but man, once the mainstream media gets a hold of something, I don't like talking about it because it's like the pile-on effect. Sometimes I feel like I get the ball rolling on that. Whoops, sorry, hold on. Just messed up my microphone. This microphone's about to die. So sometimes I feel like I get the ball rolling on this, mainstream media beating the drum on a volcano or something. So what's going on? Well, people need to be aware of a slight change that's happened in the past day and a half, 2 days. See up here on the far northeast side of the Big Island? And do you see the cluster of earthquakes on this brown splotch? Now, I can pull the coordinates for both sets of quakes. One on the brown splotch, the other up on the northeast coast of Hawaii. I think they're both significant and need to be talked about. I don't think it means disaster or anything yet, but I would like to just show you what's there. Something to consider. So a new swarm of earthquakes is breaking out up here. The mainstream media is weighing in on it, talking about 1984s or 82 or whatever. 1980s eruption and 1970s eruption of Mauna Loa that was huge. And you might even see old footage in these old 1970s movies where they're showing it, okay? Like a James Bond film, they might be showing it or something. And they're talking about it erupting, but they're saying it's not going to. So they're like kind of trying to play both sides. Now, if that was just all that's going on there, we've seen many earthquake swarms happen here before, and usually that's followed up by significant earthquakes that strike down south, in between, for instance, Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, Mauna Loa, and Pahala. That when the magma chamber starts to shift or inflate, we will see something like a 5 or even bigger that accompanies that. Now, we already had a 5. Or, well, was it a 5 or a 4.9? Now, I do have to talk about up here on the northeast coast of Hawaii, though. This is the part that I don't like having to talk about it because I know how people take things and just make it into something more. And as soon as the YouTube people get a hold of this, they already know about it, but let's just go pull the coordinates and go show you what's there. Man, this gets me in trouble when I go look stuff up. But I blame the other people who seize on it and don't tell you that it's not going to happen now. So what am I talking about? Well, out here off the coast. Do you see this? This is one of a few features that are along the northeast coast. And there are a few others down south and over on the west coast where there have been collapses which have happened. Collapses that drop off maybe 2 to 4,000 feet down and an area of miles and miles and miles. And it happened suddenly in the past with seismic activity. Now, I don't know if this is the Halani slump, but this is one of the collapsed areas where you can clearly see it's collapsed in the past compared to down the shelf that goes over to the east, for instance, has not collapsed. And then you get to here. Here's one that has. And then here's a huge one, a huge portion that did. So the earthquake is happening over here along, now this is undersea bathymetric measurements, just so you know, that's from ships. That's not scraped out like that. They just kind of, I guess that's where they took the boat and stopped there. But backing it out, you'll see clearly we're next to 2. One's right there. That's what they came out to image, obviously, was this. We're right next to it with the new earthquakes right on land. I don't have any examples to go on. I don't have anything to give to you other than it's a collapse point. Now, what happened when the collapse happened? A Pacific-wide tsunami and Hawaii-wide tsunami that went all the way around the island and back and caused 20, 30, 40, and 50 feet tsunamis to come in when it collapsed supposedly in the past, according to historical record. according to, I think it's from the legend of the people that are there. I don't know if it happened in recorded history, but you can look up the Helani slump to find out more information on that and the collapse that happened there, wherever that is. But this is, again, a different spot up on the north side. I don't know if it's exactly there. Getting back to it, we have seismic activity there, which is worth paying attention to. I would think that would be caused by the island shifting, by the magma chambers shifting. So when Mauna Loa shifts, when Kilauea shifts, Mauna Loa shifts. We also see Pahala and going out to Loihi, which is now called something else entirely I can't pronounce. And then Mauna Kea with Hualalai even starts to shift. We start seeing small outbreaks of, well, even up to swarms, 10 or more earthquakes in a spot in a day at these ancient volcanoes. So the whole island's connected. When you see one go, it starts to move with the rest. It's no shock, and what I'm saying there shouldn't cause any panic or anything. But now that you understand where it's moving, what's coming next? Let's go back and look up to the north. We have a 4.8 and a 4.6. Add it together equals 4.96. So what's coming into Hawaii? Well, right there in between where two sets of rings overlap, do you see the undersea mount chain? Goes down to the south, down into Hawaii, Hawaiian island chain. Goes over, dead ends into Hawaii. Also goes over and follows over into the Gulf of California. So we can warn Gulf of California too in a second. But Hawaii's going to get hit, new 4.9. And we'll look down between all four sets of rings, which adjusts our area ever so slightly. Looks like we're going to watch it. I'm trying to get it down to 200 miles. But anywhere in between the 2.7 up to the north, that puts us at Mauna Kea. If this is a giant diamond shape, the center of it would be southeast of Mauna Kea or north of Kilauea. So north of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. But every time I've issued a warning for the area north of there, it's hit down at Pahala for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe the magma chambers are tied in a weird way. Maybe it's a zigzag back and forth. I don't know. All I know is that when I've looked up to the north, it tends to hit to the south. I'm trying to get it 200 miles, so it's covered by both, I suppose. 4.9 incoming. Just like the last round. And you see where it's coming from. One more time. It's coming from up here. Should come down, over, and in. Boom. Also go over into Alaska, where we should see a significant sized earthquake by the end of the week up here at the peninsula. And I hope I got that right, because if not, then it'll come into the middle of all these small earthquakes. And what's the middle of all the small earthquakes? If we take the 3 up here to the north and the 3 down here to the south, or 2.9, that would put us directly in the middle of Anchorage. So I hope I'm right. If I'm wrong, it'll hit right in the middle of Anchorage by the end of the week. But it should be out on the island chain, the peninsula. United States, we got to talk about this. I issued a warning for Northern California to be on watch for a 5.3, and I warned Southern California to be on watch for a 5, up to 5.3, 5.1, 5.2, somewhere low end 5. Also warned Texas for a 4.5, a 4.0 to a 4.5. So what hit? Northwest California, we warned for a 5.3. What hit? A 4.3. And Texas, we warned for a 4 to 4.5. And what hit? A 3.5. Southern California, we're still waiting. We're waiting for the area east-northeast of LA, out at Lake Palmdale, for a 5 to hit. And it hasn't hit yet. Have a couple more days to go in the warning, but there it is, up to the north. We are 1 magnitude less. So we are 1 magnitude less exactly in Northern California, and we're 1 magnitude less exactly in Texas. So what does Northwest California and Texas have in common, first of all? Well, let me show you. Let's go back to the Usgs map over here on the west coast of the United States. Coming out of the Juan de Fuca fracture zone, this is our 4.3 earthquake, 1 magnitude under what I'm expecting. But look over to the east. Here's our Texas quake. How are they connected? Coming off the Juan de Fuca fracture zone and going into California and then over to the edge of the North American craton, that's how they're connected. So they're within the magnitude of each other. They're across the edge of the plate. You literally have one before the other, and they're tied to each other in that there's a wave traveling across, causing both of them. It's not that the 4 out on the west coast caused a 3 over in Texas. It's that both the 4 on the west coast and the 3 over in Texas on the craton are both caused by a wave in the same day that's going across the whole area. It's also what caused the 3.7 down south. Now, I'd like to show you the halfway point between these two, where the 4.3 is and the 3.7. See where the rings overlap? They overlap on the creeping section of the San Andreas, going over as far east as Long Valley and as far west, of course, as the San Andreas and out in the ocean. I have a warning going down here, right here at the Mojave Desert, where it comes into the green splotch of LA's basin. And the warning's for a 5. Not canceling it. Only a couple more days to go. What else moved? Well, aside from our spots moving that we would expect to move on the edge of the craton, within the magnitude, down to the point. And Texas is actually down to the half magnitude, so that's a definite hit for Texas. We are exactly at 1 magnitude off in California. Small earthquake-wise, let's turn down the rings and just take a look. We're looking at 24 hours worth of quakes. We have a stack of earthquakes in Utah, a stack of earthquakes up here in northwest Wyoming at Yellowstone National Park. We have a spattering of earthquakes out across the west coast of Washington and Oregon, just a few. We'll look these up. Going down into Oregon's coast, we have an explosion reported. We'll look that up. And then, of course, California. Magnitudes are now starting to increase. We're up to 3.3 and 3.7 down off the coast. So 3.3 on land, where this big stack of earthquakes, it's called geysers of California. And if you look up the geysers, of course there's geysers there, but it's a volcano where this big stack of earthquakes is, north of San Francisco. And why is it getting hit with a huge stack? Well, there's tension coming in, or the wave is actually coming in, and it's causing breaking. Or it could just be causing pressure, which then is releasing with small earthquakes, microquakes. Nonetheless, it's all over the hillsides here. Here's our geothermal turbine, nearest geothermal turbine. And the pipelines and all that is connected from one to the other. Clear Lake volcanic field right next to it with Mount Canocti. That's what they're drilled into to get the steam. That's the stack of earthquakes going up to 3.3. That's an increase magnitude-wise. So why would we all of a sudden go up to 3.3? Well, look what's up north. A 4.3. Isn't it amazing? Well, let's go take a look. 4.3 up here. 3.3 north of San Francisco. USGS doesn't even have it on the feed anymore because it's over 24 hours old, technically. This technically struck on the 19th at 23:59. Literally, they have it 1 minute before midnight. Ha! We're 1 minute away from it disappearing, guys. Glad I showed it now. As we go, no, wait, I've got more than 24 hours turned on. There we go. Going down along the coast, same size quakes from yesterday. 2.4, 2.5, 2.4, 2.5, 2.4, and a 2.2, and then we putter out once we get down to the Central Valley. The push that I was talking about, it went through at least as far south as the coast of Mexico. That was the previous push, all this little small earthquakes we talked about in the last update. But a new 4.3 incoming, the wave. 4.3, 3.3, and so forth. Now up to the north, what's going on up here at Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Rainier? What do all three of those have in common? Do you know? What does Mount Hood have in common with Mount St. Helens? And what does Mount St. Helens have in common with Mount Rainier? All three are volcanoes. All three are getting hit with earthquakes on the sides of the volcanoes. All three are next to each other. Mount St. Helens, very famous. Big fires going on there, right? That's what I heard. Big fires. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but there it is. Big fires. And what caused the fires, we will never know. Mount Rainier had the big lenticular cloud and fire on it a couple of weeks ago. Right next to each other. And Mount Hood down to the south. It had the fires a couple of weeks, or maybe it was a month ago, on the side of it. Boy, they're all burning. That's where the quakes are. Just a few small ones, zeros at this point. As we go up to the east by northeast, out in the middle of nowhere, what's this? Oh, an explosion out at Sprague, Washington. Sprague, Washington. What's at Sprague, Washington exploding? What are they blowing up out here? You know what's interesting about there being an explosion there is that I looked up hotspots yesterday. And there was a whole bunch of hotspots going on out here Wait. Dude. This is a recreation area. This is a state recreation area. What is this? Oh, look. Oh, a quarry on a state recreation area. Right on the side of it. Wonderful. That, you know what they're doing. When they have a quarry and a recreation area, do you know what you actually need to look for? Evidence of an ancient civilization being hit. When you see that combo, quarry, natural preserve, and another natural preserve, and another preserve, and another one all the way around, that means they're trying to hide something. And you go in and you'll find that it's usually evidence of some kind. Oh, and the lakes with the dams, the reservoir. Oh, and railroad too. You find the railroad going over it, and the power lines also. They'll put the power lines over it. So that all being said, I start to look in here and wonder, what's in here? I don't know. Don't have the time to look it up now. I don't have the time or the will. But at Fish Trap, there we are. Fish Trap, Washington. Kaboom. I don't know what's exploding out there. But let's go look up the earthquake up here to the north by northwest. See this one. Chelan Falls, Washington. 2.2 kilometer depth. This should be a pretty easy one to look up. It's just a little microquake. No biggie. But I want to know what's there. Inquiring minds want to know. Everybody wants to know. Look them all up. Oh, wait. Uh-oh. What's this? Uh-oh. BB Springs Wildlife Area. We got another one of these wildlife areas. Columbia River. Oh, Powerhouse Park. Well, it's where we're generating a boatload of power for the area. Major hydroelectric generation. Where are they getting that from? Is that coming out of the river here? It is. Look at this. They got this river coming down and turning this hydroelectric dam before it flows into the river here. Wow, power generation. Big, huge reservoir they've made. Oh, man, you got to start looking in that area, too. Now, oh, wait, I know what it is. Oh, hey. Sometimes you just have to back it out ever so slightly to see what's in the area. Something I discovered a few years ago that I can't find any talk from any professionals on. This. You see it? Here, hold on. Let me get an angle. I don't normally show angle, but there. Let's go around it. There it is. Do you see it now? Or maybe I do need to just bring it in from above. And that's not a pareidolia thing here, guys. This is actually a giant ring or a crater of some kind. Now, the measurement on this, we go, elevation in the middle is 2230. Now, over on the western side, 2,940. And on the eastern side, over here, 2,500, 2,600. So 2,600 on this side, 2,900 on this side, and then down in the middle, we go down to, let's say, 22. So it goes slightly down. It's a basin of some kind, but it's a circular, collapsed basin. Now, that is an interesting feature to have an earthquake next to. Now, there's others that are nearby that are similar but bigger, like this, for instance. Some kind of ancient caldera of some kind there, and another one here. Well, I don't know. This one is somewhat questionable to me. This one certainly is not. That one's visible. Anybody can see it. And anybody can see this one as well. But you have to know what to look for. So when we get in and zoom in on this, these are river, well, basins now, or rivers. But I would call that some kind of greater collapse that happened around it, which then allowed for the rivers to flow through it. But that's just a guess on my part. That's where the earthquake is. That's the only reason I even know about it to begin with. Down to the east by southeast, everybody knows about Yellowstone. I don't need to tell you too much about Yellowstone other than to say these are earthquakes, not tremors. There's normally hundreds, if not thousands of tremors per day as the magma shifts in the magma chamber down below. But these are actual breaks in the plate up above it, but now we're spreading out down to the south, down towards Jackson Hole. Now guess what's down here next to Jackson Hole? See where it says Hoback, Wyoming? let me show you something wonderful. Are you ready? Yellowstone, guys, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And Jackson Hole, oh my God, if you guys ever get up there, you got to get up there. So I'm not dogging on the place at all. But right next to this, when you drive up there, if you drive up, you might fly in, but when you drive up, you'll most likely drive in from the south, unless you're coming from the west coast. You're going to drive up through here, through these two valleys, and there are mountain ranges on either side. And you get some dirt highways even out here. Dirt highways. But as you're driving through, you probably aren't going to see them because they're over the hilltops. You'll start to see, if you drive back on the back roads, these oil and gas pumping operations. As far as the eye can see, wastewater disposal, fracking. I guess they figure, hey, look, it's next to the Yellowstone. Just put as much crap in the ground there, get as much out. It'll eventually get blown away and covered at some point in the future. And this is the whole valley all the way up to the pinnacle tip on both sides. I'm just randomly zooming in. Here, this side right here. Here we go. Randomly zooming in, and you've got more and more and more. Oil and gas. Yellowstone. But wait, Yellowstone's right here. Here's Lake Yellowstone. Here's the Grand Tetons. Here's the entrance into Yellowstone Park and so forth. The drill points point up like an arrow to Yellowstone. One more time. Craton Edge. Whoops. Craton Edge. You guys see it? It goes right through the area, right across where Yellowstone is. And I think that matters. That the supervolcano is there on the edge of the Craton at the Wyoming border with Idaho. Because if you look out on the west coast, do you see the purple part of the Craton diagram? It goes out to the California-Nevada border. And what's out at the California-Nevada border is this, where the purple part goes out to. Let me turn on our borders and labels. We go right out to here where the purple part is, and this is Long Valley Caldera, the other mapped and marked supervolcano we all know about, or at least professionals know about, Long Valley with 1,000 cubic kilometers of melt down below. So now we have two supervolcanoes, the only two that are known, along the edge of the Craton deformed edge. That can't be chance. But why? Well, this wave. The wave that's coming in from the northwest travels across the edge of the Craton and tries to distribute out itself equally across it as best it can. And that's why we're getting the same sized earthquakes, spreading from the northwest over to the edge of the Craton, spreading from the southwest over to the Craton. Speaking of spreading from the southwest over to the Craton, we go right out of California, following it like a line. You can trace these earthquakes in a trajectory right over to our arrow, and this sometimes completes all the way across over an arrow shape. Now, these earthquakes here, I've already just talked about the location. This is Long Valley Caldera supervolcano with the earthquakes around it. Over to the west, over in the valley, that is a bulging laccolith. My own personal discovery in California. I didn't even have to go there. Just did it on Google Earth. Earthquake coming in right here, right next to coarse gold. Do you see Yosemite lakes and so forth? Now, really, a bunch of earthquakes struck around this thing, and a bunch of fires broke out around this thing, this giant, bulging, circular shape. And this giant, bulging, circular shape is a laccolith caused by rising magma down below. It is common around the planet to have a bulging laccolith, but not normally this size. This is a supervolcanic laccolith. On the other side of the mountain range is Long Valley Caldera, and it is the same size. Now, how did I find this? Fires broke around this thing. I started zooming in on it. Earthquakes breaking around this thing. Started zooming in on it. Then I found others. Further down to the east-southeast. One here that's collapsed. And we find these over in places like Iran on the plate boundary. Well, the plate boundary is right here. Here's the San Andreas. And just like in Iran, right interior to the plate boundary, you get your laccoliths. So here's one here. Again, that's not pareidolia. This is an actual ring shape. And then up to the north is our giant laccolith right here. I don't even need to have place marks on them. You can see them. In between them, there's another one at Shaver Lake. It's a little harder to see. It's covered in trees, but you can see the ripple-like shape of the laccolith as it goes back up to the top. And we have exact copies of this over in Iran, that don't have water in them or trees on them. Down to the east-southeast, there's another one, but we don't want to get into that now. Okay, 2.2 striking there. Line of earthquakes going across the supervolcano out into Nevada and down to the nuclear test sites. Man-made faults, cracks in the ground created by blasting, not from quarries, from nukes. And there's a lot of nuke sites here, hundreds of them. This is the famous Doomtown. Doomtown. Blown away. They actually recreated the scene in the Indiana Jones movie where he got into the refrigerator. Don't do that, kids. All these craters, this is not from aerial bombardment. Every single one's an underground nuke test site. I've showed it 1,000,000 times. Well, maybe not 1,000,000. U.S. nuke Operation Seaweed DSS. October 1st, 1969. Undisclosed kilotons. What are these? Operation Mushroom. You gotta be kidding me. Operation Carp. Operation Barbell. Operation Gerbil. Uh-oh. Articu. Atarcu. That looks almost like Starford. Operation Bordeaux. Let's get the information on some of these. August 18th, 1967. 18 kilotons. All of these craters going all the way to the north, hundreds of them, and all the way south. And that's not all. Over here is where we let the Europeans come over in the 1980s and 90s and do theirs. So France and the UK came over here, and we partnered up with them, of course. But, yeah. So you have different tests here. Going up to the 90s, amazing stuff, because that's where our earthquake is, right next to it, a man-made fault. So let's recap. A line of earthquakes starting up here right where our 4.3 is, the biggest of the bunch. 4.3 goes down to 3.3 once we get to the volcano. Once we go across the Bay Area, we focus in down in Southern California, where yesterday's push is still going through, and today's push is still up north. So in between, it's somewhat quiet right now. Don't let your guard down. I've got a warning going in LA out to Lake Palmdale for a 5. I'm 1 magnitude under to the north, so you better hope I'm 1 magnitude under down to the south. And if I'm 1 magnitude under down to the south, you get a 4.1 instead of a 5.1. And that's a huge difference for damage-wise. Over to the east, we go out of the supervolcano over down to the nuclear test sites, and I still have yet to look up the swarm over in Utah. One final spot to talk about, Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. My other huge discovery, literally huge. Let's show you. Up here between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. First of all, everybody knows about Lake Tahoe, I think. This place right here is Lake Tahoe. This place is Pyramid Lake. In between the two is an oval shape, which my eye was drawn to many years ago when the same thing as I described down to the south, fires and earthquakes, broke out around this thing. I had volcano place marks, which I had downloaded, and I found out it was lined with its own volcanoes, and it's getting hit with earthquakes around the outside edge and fires. Then I found out there's geothermal fields on both sides of it. Steamboat Springs down here is being tapped into by humans. And up to the north are the Needles at Pyramid Lake, which are on an Indian reservation, and they are not being tapped into. But it's a geothermal field nonetheless. So same distance, too. If you look at the giant oval and geothermal field up here and geothermal down here, fold and basin here with Lake Tahoe, deep fold and basin, and a deep fold and basin here over at Pyramid Lake. I mean, we're talking like 2,000, each one's like 2,000 feet deep, right? Let's see. Yeah, it's like almost 2,000 feet deep there. And going up to the mountains, I don't know, maybe that's an exaggeration. That's 1,000 feet deep. Still, huge, deep folds on either side of this giant, ancient oval shape. So what could be oval shape and lined with its own volcanoes, hit with earthquakes around the outside edge, and hit with fires around the outside edge? What could cause that? Rising magma. The same thing that could cause the fires up at Mount St. Helens, up at Mount Rainier, up at Mount Hood, down at Mount Shasta, and all the other volcanoes that burned suddenly in the past few weeks. Going into the past couple months, actually. Too many. Down south we go. We go down to Ridgecrest, California, really quick. Ridgecrest, you guys are sitting high and dry. Small earthquakes and not many of them. That's a change. I would think, well, I'm going to have to issue a separate forecast for this. So let's wait until the earthquake hits here east-northeast of LA. Then we'll issue a new warning for Ridgecrest. However, if the earthquake strikes at Palmdale, you're going to feel it in Ridgecrest. You're across the Mojave. The people in LA might feel it less than the people in Ridgecrest, the earthquake that I'm looking for out here in the Mojave. Okay. Now let's go out into Utah. Finally, let's go over to Utah, and then we'll go over to Texas and the East Coast. Milford, Utah. What's over in Milford? Anybody know? My longtime viewers should know. I've told you stories about this place. Stuff I found out here by looking just for other things. Finding all kinds of ancient stuff. For instance, scraped out hillsides that they tried to say were done by farmers. And I'm not exaggerating. You think this is from flyovers? It's not. Look. Do you see ever so slightly how there's green growing in there? You see that? That's not from farmers. I wrote the actual Department of Agriculture? Oh man, who did I write? This is 15 years ago, before I even started on YouTube. I found these out here in the desert, and I wrote the people in Utah, and they wrote back. They said it was for erosion purposes. But then I went and looked, I go, where did they scrape all the rock? There should be huge piles of rock. What, do they take it all away? To prevent erosion? Really? Take all the rock away to prevent erosion? Right? And then you go across entire regions where it's been. This is not from satellite imagery. Again, I can zoom in and show you. This is actual tree and rock. It just goes on and on and on. You know how many people would take it? It would take 1,000 years to do that. Anyway, that's where our earthquake is. Jeez. Earthquake swarm. Right next to it. Now, you've actually seen over to the east of the earthquake, we have unmarked volcano crater knoll. Let's zoom in on that. First of all, you'd think they would have this thing marked, but whatever. So, no information on it other than that. But we're back to this. Back to this. Old Farmer Joe out there again, scraping up the mountainside. Gonna go stop this erosion. And where's the rock? Don't ask no question, Dutch. Here's the size of a regular road. I got myself a huge tractor. 10,000 miles long. 40 miles wide. The Paul Bunyan tractor. The Blue Ox, I call it. Tall tales. Let's go over here down to Texas. Speaking of tall tales, let's go down to Texas on the edge of the Craton. Go down and take a look. So what could have done that? I don't know. Some kind of ancient advanced civilization. Nothing I need to be talking about. Stuff I'll get in trouble. Nothing you need to know about. Let's just put it that way. You don't need to know. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm not good. You don't need to know. If you need to know, you would have known. And because you don't know, I don't need to tell you. Need to know basis. Here we are. Speaking of need to know basis, I had to find out about this myself. A bunch of earthquakes start striking down here. Back in like 2010, 2011. No, 2011. I start making videos showing everybody. I would upload the video to YouTube, and a bunch of professionals would come over, call me a tree hugger and a hippie. And I'm like, well, if I am maybe a hippie, a pack of Dutch masters sitting there, I'm like rolling. Anyway, so quite literally, they denied the relation between the drill points and the earthquakes. They said there was no relation, and they called it a conspiracy theory. Well, I didn't accept that. And I kept documenting the earthquakes that were striking at these spots. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Then 5.0 level activity came rolling across each pumping operation. From Utah into Colorado, down through Texas, up through Oklahoma, into Kansas, and over to Arkansas. Even to Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, and the East Coast after that. 5s happened over the course of several months into a year. But in a short period of time, 3 5s. The 3 largest earthquakes in state history for each state. Arkansas, BB Greenbrier, over here in central Oklahoma, and down here in southwest Texas and southeast Texas. Now, southwest Texas and southeast Texas, you can see the edge of the craton. It's marked in a tannish brown color, going down to green. But let me take you over to Google Earth and show it to you. You can even see it here on the topography. It looks like a river, but it's a bulge. This is a huge bulge. So that's not a river. Well, I mean, there may be a river down along the base of it, but really, that's a 1,000-foot rise from over here to up here, all along it in a giant U-shaped bend along the south edge of the craton. Now, the earthquakes go along there. This is one of my biggest discoveries, that there's a flow going from the west coast and goes over to Texas and back up all the way to the east coast. And we get the same sized earthquakes within a hair of a point of each other, going all the way across, somewhat equally spaced. Now, that goes back to the wave I've been talking about this whole update. The equal spacing on the quakes going across an unequal mass. This is a wave tank that's not perfectly square or rectangular or anything. It's all wavy edged. And going across the wavy edge, we still have a somewhat equidistant spacing on the quake clusters coming out of Texas, going across Oklahoma, over to the New Madrid seismic zone, and should go ultimately up the East Coast in the next several days. We should see a new swarm over here on the East Coast next. Swarm. They'll probably try and hide it. Say it's like sonic booms, and just say people are mysteriously reporting truck rumbles. Professionals can't find seismic signals, they'll say. Mystery booms and rumbles, something. East Coast. That's not even a forecast. That's just a better watch out thing. Why would you need to watch out for mystery booms and rumbles? Well, there's been times in the past where after the mystery booms and rumbles, there were explosions. Huge explosions and small ones. Some that sent people flying off the beach when the beach exploded. And the media tried to blame it on seaweed and methane gas. I smelled some methane off that, but it wasn't from any kind of explosion on the shores. If it was from compressed methane coming up from the edge of the plate, not from seaweed. Anything else worth mentioning before we wrap this up? Central America, South America, that's where the big earthquake struck for today. I'm looking over to the east. We have to warn the people in the Caribbean 6.0 plus, and that whenever anything big hits there, that totally sucks. So let the people know 7 days there. Europe, let me just quickly wrap this up. We have a warning that expires tomorrow night, well, a day from now, for the Aegean Sea. And we have a warning going for up to 6.0 level activity. It has not hit. And neither has the earthquake activity expected up in North Italy at Milan. Instead, we got a 3.3 and a 4 down to the south. This is way under what I'm looking for. Tomorrow, if the earthquake doesn't hit, I will cancel the warning and we will figure out where the energy is still trapped. I think I've got a good idea where it's trapped. It's trapped in between where this whole line of earthquakes is, going out towards the Canaries and back over towards Greece. And we can go back and look at the plate boundary. Going from out here towards the Canaries, west-southwest of Portugal, back across South Spain, up across Italy, back down across the plate boundary, over to Turkey, compared to the quakes. Do you see how we jump up into Central Europe in France, and then come back down to the south and go down towards Canaries? We go up into France, and then back down across into the Canaries. All of Europe is in motion right now, from the Canaries back to Turkey in a day on a 2 to 3.0 basis. That means we're going to take the next step up. And so it looks like I'm taking it right down to the last day. Should hit tomorrow, right in the middle of the Aegean Sea. So when I issue a warning, it's usually for 7 days, unless it's 7 to 10. 10 only applies to big earthquakes and the deep earthquakes. If I have to issue anything longer than that, I'm very specific about it. I get on and number out the days and everything. Right now, our warnings are for 7 days for the new next round to be coming in after our big quake. Big quake is due. Big quake is due right through here. And we're moving on one side. We're moving on the other. It's now pretty focused. Langila volcano is really right in the middle of the silent zone. Silent zone from Solomon Islands all the way over to Vanuatu. But with Vanuatu getting hit with a 4.6 or whatever, that's now shifted the area just ever slightly just right into the middle. I hope I'm wrong. Hope nothing significant hits at all. But if I'm wrong, I'm going to be gone for a while, try to figure out what happened. So either way, it's going to suck for me, because if a big earthquake hits, we're going to be on reporting. There's going to be people that are going to be worried. And if it doesn't hit, that's me flopping a big earthquake. And that, again, it's like egg on my face you wouldn't believe. Ultimate shame. But it is what it is. The way I view it is, I'd rather warn you guys about an area where I'm seeing the potential of a large earthquake, and, just have egg on my face, as opposed to having a roof on your head from not being prepared or something, right? Like, I'll sacrifice my ego for that, and I don't even think half the stuff's monetized. If there's commercials on it, I don't even know, so it's not like I'm making a lot on it. Not trying to cash in. If I wanted to, I'd sell t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. I think you can get a couple stickers. Speaking of selling stuff, hey guys, if you guys want to go check out my Instagram page, Glowing Speakers 314, Glowing Speakers 314 on Instagram, you can go check me out. And I'm working with a guy up in Vermont, a expert cultivator, Pops, up in Vermont. Man, he is so great. This guy is awesome. And you can just go check out my Glowing Speakers 314 page if you want to find out more info. No pressure. No peer pressure. And you guys have a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And I will be back if anything else significant takes place. That may be tonight or tomorrow. We're getting down to the last, like I said, 2 days on the big quake. Do you have an earthquake plan? It's pretty basic. You need to take shelter underneath a table or a desk. That means you need to know where a table or desk is to take shelter underneath, so you're not running around when an earthquake hits. Now, as for survival afterwards, you need to have an emergency kit. The emergency kit has the basics in it that you need to survive any disaster for a few days. Change of clothes, set of shoes, flashlight, battery, water, and food. First aid kit is essential as well. Water and food, though, is going to be what really gets you through. And I don't know what to tell you about that. I would do granola bars and fruit roll-ups and high energy, high sugars, high proteins, easy to eat, easy packaging, lightweight, those kind of foods. I'd skip the big steaks and the canned goods in the backpack. I would. Now, granted, the canned goods are going to probably have some kind of liquid or water in them that you could possibly drink. That might double as water for you if you're really, wanting to be efficient in what you're carrying, food and water-wise. However, water is about 7 pounds a gallon. So you'll just have to have either a pump for that or some people do those water straws. I would do the pump. It's more expensive, but with the backpacker's pump, you're just going to get way better quality, and there will be no question about it. With the straws, I don't know. That's putting a lot of faith in a little piece of plastic. At least you can have multiple carbon filters and other things that you pump the brackish water through if you have a backpack pump. But in times of emergency, those straw things, I don't know. I don't sell any of that crap. I don't have any of those straw things. I have the backpacker's pump. It was $200 at REI. So... and that's a backpacker store. One of those hiking stores you guys can find similar products at. Or now online, probably Amazon, right? 11:57 p.m., time to save this as a video, and we will get this uploaded to YouTube. It will premiere most likely within a half hour or so of me uploading it. For everybody over on YouTube, let me say thank you for viewing my videos and for watching after I'm uploading them. And for everybody on Twitch, I know there's just a tight-knit band of you over here, a few hundred at the most maybe watching right now, and I think there's 50,000 of you total that are following me on Twitch. I have this live stream running for you guys to watch the earthquakes live. I may not be on here talking all the time. I may just record videos and upload them to YouTube going forward in the future. However, I'm live now talking to you on Twitch. I appreciate you being here, and please, of course, share the stream. The stream is here even if I'm not, or if something happens to me. And that could happen. I am not kidding. If you guys knew what's going on, people are like, oh, why don't you, Dutch, just turn off your comments. I'm like, oh man, dude, you guys, butting heads with the Department of Interior, USGS, biggest agencies in the world, biggest institutions, and top professors. It's gotten me into a little bit deep trouble here and there. And in the past few weeks, me going down a road that I don't normally go down to bring you information I don't normally bring you on topics that I don't normally talk about has rousted a Balrog level. Think of Gandalf down in the bottom of the mines of Moria. And they're running away, and then I've rousted this giant creature that's... It's got a whip. I am... And, my love of the halfling's leaf has clouded my brain. Hey, let me leave you with a little fact, couple little fun facts. You guys know about Halley's Comet, right? Halley's Comet. The reason that I was just reminded of this, Gandalf going down to the center of the earth. Tolkien telling us somewhere without really telling us. But let me quickly show you over on my YouTube community page. There we go. Oh, wait. It's gone? My post is gone? Well, never mind. A little censorship to wrap it up for you. No big deal. Dude. Well, I'll make a separate video on this. How about that? We'll just make a separate video and go down that rabbit hole. You guys have a morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Uploading now.